As a Black person or as an African, we first identify with our traditional institutions because they give us the very sense of our identity. The traditional institutions go beyond tenure. It's a lifetime thing. And so when you see an empowered traditional ruler, he's thinking about his people for the rest of his life. It's a legacy as opposed to a tenured position. And so the vision that comes behind that is so much more powerful and potent if delivered properly. I think it's important for governments who care about their people to begin again to see how they can empower traditional institutions for various reasons, but one, most importantly, being giving their people a sense of identity and a voice.
Good afternoon, I'm Josh Wilson from Time Africa. I'm here with the Queen Consort of the Warri Kingdom and also the founder of Elevate Africa. We're here to ask some pertinent questions in regards to the event itself and the future of Africa. Elevate has managed to position itself in a very unique way from a continental standpoint, and I think ultimately from a global standpoint, considering Africa's current positioning. So I guess that's where we can kind of start, in this conversation. When you consider monarchy on the continent has been such a broad-based thing and such a really invigorating and exciting part of our history. And it seems that has slowly dissipated over time, whether that be the royal family in Ethiopia and other places. And obviously we have royal families in so many different jurisdictions. You've managed to create something that is very Pan-African, very unifying. And that isn't so common for royal families dramatically on the continent to the level that has been done here. What do you feel the future is for monarchy in general as it pertains to the continent? Is there a future for monarchy, and what does it look like in your opinion?
Really good question. I always say something. Interestingly enough, Africa, if you look at us as a geopolitical space, is the only continent that has a king in almost every country. Africa is a continent of kings. In Nigeria, I've lost count of how many kings we actually have. But it just goes to show that the very fabric of the African man is embedded in their traditional institutions, actually. And traditional institutions, unfortunately, have been demoted to being relics at worst and mascots at best. Voices being taken out. I'm a philosopher, so I can come up with a hypothesis. It's not fact, but I've studied it, and I think it has a lot to do with the removal of the voice from traditional institutions in countries has directly correlated almost to the sense of identity that the people have and the sense of ownership that they have and the voice that they have and even the buy-in that they have into their governments. I'm from Nigeria, and I often ask the question, what will it take to be Nigerian? What does it actually mean to be Nigerian? As a Black person or as an African, we first identify with our traditional institutions because they give us the very sense of our identity. I think, unfortunately, to demote them or to remove their importance or to dilute their importance in the space of governance has actually possibly done something that needs to, or should I say, to be more politically friendly, I suppose. I think it's important for governments who care about their people to begin again to see how they can empower traditional institutions for various reasons, but one, most importantly, being giving their people a sense of identity and a voice. And why is that? The traditional institutions go beyond tenure. It's a lifetime thing. And so when you see an empowered traditional ruler, he's thinking about his people for the rest of his life. It's a legacy as opposed to a tenured position. And so the vision that comes behind that is so much more powerful and potent if delivered properly. Now, to your question, what role does traditional or the monarchies in Africa have to play with regards to the future? A lot. One of the things that His Majesty and I hope to do is to showcase, just by being ourselves, that we're monarchy from Nigeria, from the continent. We don't have two heads, and it's possible to use the space that you're given to create impact. You don't have to, the learned sense of helplessness that has come through the dilution of office can be reclaimed, actually, and you can begin to exercise leadership in your own space for your people and even for the greater continent of Africa and the African diaspora.
When you look at other jurisdictions that do have monarchies, and that have managed to progress so well because they don't have to deal with the amount of red tape that some democracies do. If you look at the UAE and you look at Saudi Arabia and look at these places that do have monarchies, historically, obviously, in some jurisdictions, there's obviously been this issue with monarchies because of the fact that, who you have in charge is what matters. It's not about the actual governance structure,
Yeah,
right?
this is
But
true.
the really positive thing about those examples is he has one vision
Exactly.
for a 50, 60, 70-year period.
Exactly.
And obviously in the democratic sense, obviously that can change every 3-4 years. You can have a corridor that you're investing in and someone's like, no, I don't want to do this anymore.
Exactly.
And so you're going through all this tumultuous time.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a potential for monarchy to be able to, similar to, I guess, the Ashanti Kingdom in Ghana, that has a lot of sway over the presidency? Similarly in the UK, King Charles is the head of state. There's a bit of sway that's had there.
Yeah.
Do you feel that in more African jurisdictions, if there is that kind of influence from monarchies, do you feel that that will be a positive precursor to growth?
Most certainly, because we've seen, once again, in these jurisdictions that you just mentioned, that the importance of culture and the importance of the truth is, when we look at culture, and whenever I say that word, we immediately think of dances and, maybe fancy dresses, but culture goes beyond that. It's actually a belief system. And so it's important that we have the belief system as influence in places where decisions are being made. It's as simple as that, actually. So I definitely do think so, yes. Yeah.
When you think of Nigeria is a fascinating example.
Yes.
Because you look at how the country, specifically the legal country of Nigeria, is founded from the Royal Niger Company in the UK to what it is now, with over 2,000 ethnic groups. It's dramatic in size, as you mentioned, with many different kingdoms. How is that in Nigeria to be able to deal with? And I think the Warri Kingdom is quite unique because it has Igbos, it has Hausa, it has Yoruba, it has so many different influences within that kingdom. There's been, it's 15th, 16th century, if I'm not mistaken.
15th century.
Yeah, incredible tenure, considering the history around that time specifically.
Yes.
They've managed to continue on. What is that juxtaposition and that framing, I guess, like in Nigeria, when it comes to different kingdoms and having to deal with that on the ground? Is that what is that circumstance like?
I think, once again, like I mentioned this morning in my speech, it would require to work together, would require a mindset shift towards unity in diversity. I think as human beings, sometimes we can be so myopic in our minds, in our worldview, and think that our position matters alone and our tribe matters, and and then there's a judgment that almost comes from looking at the other tribe, because why do I have to trust you? Even if you're Igbo and you're across the road from me, don't know you, don't know if I'm going to trust you. But I think trust and grace would amplify unity in our diversity. I think Nigeria's greatest strength is what is often cited as her greatest weakness, our diversity. Our diversity is our greatest strength, because when we all come to the table to work together, we will actually produce something that is unstoppable for the continent of Africa. We'll be able to stand as the giant of Africa that we have been said to be. So I think it's that place of mindset shift, trust between kingdoms, giving grace for differences. I don't know what I don't know about you. And so it's your duty to tell me, and it's my job. It's your duty to give me grace. It's my job to trust you and for us to work together to come to an understanding. And I think it's not going to be an easy feat. I know that it sounds very idealistic and, you might think, oh, that sounds really good, but how's that practical? It's practical when leaders choose to be transformed in themselves. You can only give what you have. And so if you decide to shift your mindset and begin to see the other person as one that you have to work with, it's actually pragmatic and practical. A unified government or a unified people is a lot more prosperous than a divided people. And so if even for the most pragmatic in our midst, if we're looking at it and saying, what do we need to do for our country or our continent to move forward, then it means we have to come together. How do I then, as a leader, transform my mindset to ensure that if I'm going in Nigeria, for example, if I'm working with this king across the region, how can I look at him and say, hey, let's come together, understand the rule of law, because that's also very important. I think as Africans, the rule of law is something that we're not quite accustomed to yet. But then a transformed leader ensures that the rule of law is upheld, because that's what builds trust amongst partners. And so uphold the rule of law and work together, embrace our diversity. Okay, you like apples, I like oranges, but we could still work together and make it apples and oranges at the dining table, and eat together and fellowship together and build together. I think that if countries or kingdoms can practice this, countries can practice this, and then the continent on a macro level can also practice this. I think that's just my little 2 cents on
No, I love it.
on unity and unity and diversity.
No, I love it, and I think that that's very pertinent, of course, to what we're doing here and the scope of this, as it pertains to elevate and what you've created with your team. I think it's something obviously that bridges unity, and is trying to obviously pull those things together in a holistic way to create a change for the continent. In a measured and sustainable fashion. And you can obviously see it from the speakers that you have here and the people that you're obviously bringing on board and putting together. So when you imagine this and you thought about something that we are elevating, you mentioned it in your speech about, is this just going to be another conference? Is it going to be something where there's no change? When you thought about bringing all these different elements together and going to different jurisdictions, as something you mentioned when we were chatting before we started talking, and Botswana and these other jurisdictions, what do you look for in those new markets that you're going to? What is it that helps you choose those markets? And what message are you trying to send in from those markets?
Brilliant, thank you. Put simply, narrative transformation. Elevate Africa exists to shift the narrative of Africa for being dependent, broken, unsustainable. And so when we go into and when we choose countries, we look for their strengths. And every country has a strength. I said that at my speech last year. We promote the United States and we see that, America, land of the free, home of the brave. But I tell you, even in cities like New York, there are ghettos that would make some of our dungeons in Lagos look, some of our streets in Lagos look like palaces. And so every country has a strength, and we want to promote the strengths and the solutions that Africa is bringing to the table. We want to amplify that. We want to proclaim it. We're Africa's evangelists in a way, to herself first, to her youth especially, because they are our added advantage, like I mentioned this morning, so that they begin to believe in themselves. They begin to believe in their continent, not forgetting the diaspora as well. And then once we believe in ourselves, then the lion can stop seeing a cat in the mirror and believe that she's a lion. And that in turn will shift global perception from weak Africa to empowered Africa. And so when we go to countries, we look for their strengths and what markets we're focusing on. We're focusing on the markets that they're already successful in, but also ones that they might want to diversify in. And then we're speaking with the governments and we're saying, how can we serve you in amplifying this to our network, and the people that we're bringing to your country?
Last one for me then. It's so interesting. So we attended the AU summit in Luanda yesterday, and there were so many different statistics came out. These amazing initiatives that have been bringing in massive amounts of funding and FDI and all these different things, and no one knows about them. Right?
Exactly.
It's so unreadily known. And so when we look at something that we are Elevate, where you're trying to obviously bring these conversations and these stories to the forefront, what are you trying to scale to here? Like, what is the next step in your mind when you think of what Elevate is remembered for, or when maybe at the end of your tenure, as we all will be at some point in our life tenure, what would you have wanted to accomplish with something like Elevate? What do you see as that why for you?
The why was what I began in the beginning, that the narrative of Africa has shifted and is being proclaimed on a global stage as empowered, as collaborative, as absolutely able and capable to provide its own solutions to its issues, as an equal partner in the global space. That would be my well done, Olori Atuwatse III. You've done very well to see Africa move from a place of disbelief to a place of self-belief. I think mainly I'm not just looking for, and this isn't, this isn't a Pan-African. I know it sounds, Pan-Africanism is very insular. I'm actually looking for Africa, friends of Africa as well, to come alongside us, because no one can really grow alone. So Africans, whether on the continent, Africans by descent, and friends of Africa, to come alongside us to elevate the narrative of Africa and to amplify that. There's amazing things that are being done on the continent, and no one is speaking about them. They're not on the important front lines. And so when we think about ourselves, obviously we're not gonna, if I don't know, if someone turned the light on in that other room and nobody knows about it, the light was never on. Right? Our vision and our mission is to ensure that when the lights are being turned on in several African countries, with our friends in the diaspora, in the Caribbean, and even in the US and in the UK, that everyone knows that the lights are being turned on. And after a while, we would stop being referred to as the dark continent, and actually the continent that brings light and gives light to the world, which we are.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Wow, should be quoted. Fantastic. No, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Your Highness. And thank you so much for the amazing initiative you're putting forth. And I know it's going to do amazing things
Thank you.
over the course of the next years to come.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you.